it's mortality. It's a condition of this mortal fallen world. But he's there to help us pick up those pieces and give us that perspective, you know. Something that I was going to ask you guys that came up as we were talking. Do you find that now that you've experienced the death of one child and you had kids after, and especially with all of the, sounds like more trauma that you had even after that, did you feel like you were, I don't know how to phrase this, afraid to lose another child? Like in my case, after Emily died, I was afraid that Sydney was going to die too. Or I was afraid that Henry was going to die too. And not even necessarily just like the anxiety of like something bad is going to happen to them, but just like things that never crossed my mind before. And suddenly, you know, I was very aware of their mortality, you know, and like, okay, this could happen. Like, I'm not safe and insulated anymore. Like, this happened to one of my kids. It could easily happen to any of the rest of them, even though they're older, you know, like obviously it's not going to be from the same cause, but suddenly my kids can die now. Like, this is the world I'm living in, you know? So what was it like for you guys?
You want to start?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely changes your perspective 100%. And at the risk of being maybe like a helicopter parent or like the greenhouse parent, however you say it, you know, we have definitely become more aware of the risks that are out there. And so, you know, pretty consistently, we've seen ourselves be a little bit more careful and a little bit more anxious when it comes to our kids and what we let them do and where they go and who they're with, which is part of the burden, but maybe also a gift, that maybe we wouldn't have had this perspective otherwise. But also, you know, in the same hand, trying to understand the gift of life and how it is just that, a gift that we are honestly giving back to God, and our kids don't even really belong to us, you know, and we're constantly wrestling with that, the internal pull to kind of cling on to them and to keep them safe at all times, but also to let them kind of be adventurous and live their life, and then know that God essentially is who they belong to. And we don't have control over, you know, if they were to die one day or before we did, or whenever that situation comes, like that's not up to us. And so it's a constant wrestle, at least for me.
Yeah. And I would say, yeah, if you talk to me about postpartum times after, you know, all the consecutive children, I've certainly handled it differently each time. And there have been years where death dictated my every move, you know, like fear absolutely at the forefront. And then there was one point with Lazarus where we're in the NICU and he's on my chest and he's plugged into all the things. He's on CPAP and everything else, but I'm giving him that skin to skin. He's in literally the safest place he could possibly be. And he had a Brady, which is when the heart just goes. And all the doctors come running in, and he was just going to go to sleep and die on my chest. It was that simple. And something in me switched where I was just like, I can't control the lives of my children. I can give them everything that I am and everything that I have. But if God decides to call them home, like I have no say in that. And in some ways it killed some of the fear in me. And in other ways, I still had to wrestle with it. And my joke is that God gave us 5 very lively boys, and they try to kill themselves every day. And so at some point, I had to finally give up and just be like, you know what? They're going to climb the tree. They're going to try to jump off the banister. They're going to slam their hand in the door. They're going to punch each other in the face, all the things. 3 of them have asthma. They're going to have asthma attacks. Like, I have to learn to surrender some of this and to enjoy them while they're here. And so I think that's what 10 years has brought us to. And that's what being open to life has brought us to as well. Just being able to have more kids and to take part in the joy, and to just recognize that on this side of things, like, there's little that we can control, and what we can control, you know, hopefully we're just entered in and loving them with everything we have. And I think that's on the positive side. You know, we've let fear dictate a lot. We've also just let that bittersweet understanding that we will not always have each other, for better, for worse. someone is going to be the first one to die and someone's going to be the last one to be here. And as hard as that is to try to imagine, it just makes you want to live each day and each hour with all the intentionality and the love that you can cram into it.
What do you think it means to grieve well?
Well, I think going back to what I was saying about how grief can take you to an interior selfish place that feels dead, ultimately. I do think that there is such thing as grieving poorly. And I say that without judging because I don't blame them for it, right? It's very tempting. And I also think that the world can sometimes give you all the tools to grieve poorly, whether it's numbing yourself through, drugs or distraction or alcohol, whatnot. Like, there are means of ignoring your grief. I think there are also ways of turning that grief into something that's solely about you, or that's, completely internal and blocking God's grace or the need for community. And I say that in a non-judgmental way, that's not the right way to grieve. To label what is the right way, that's harder for me to do, because I think depending on what the grief is, depending on the situation, like, who knows how much time is the right time, And I brought it up at my staff meeting that I was leading recently. It was the day of Clark's anniversary. And I still absolutely bubbled up in tears and apologized. I'm like, I'm sorry. You'd think by 10 years I'd have these tears together, but I don't. And so, but I think there's an authenticity in allowing our body and soul to continue to grieve if that's where we are. So I don't know that I can label the right way to grieve other than, I mean, bringing God into it. And for those who really struggle with God, at least letting your heart stay open always, so that if and when he decides to interrupt your life, you're receptive to it. I can't imagine grieving without God, even though I've had my dark nights. But it's either all or nothing, right? Like, if God's not in the picture, why are you feeling these feelings? Like, why do you have the expectation that we're supposed to live forever? And, you just lost a material being that you would never see again anyway. So it's a very dead end road while it's tempting, but I think the right way is just to keep an open heart and to stay soft, as hard as that is. It's easy to go into self-protection mode, to try to distance potential for more pain, But I think maintaining that soft heart and then trying to break your heart open outwards towards others as a meaningful way of looking outside of yourself, I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I would speak similarly for men as well, and allowing it to impact you. Again, men have a tendency in general to kind of shield themselves from suffering and hurt, or the emotional side of pain, and embrace the more physical side. But I would say grieving well, as far as a man is concerned, is allowing it to pierce your heart and impact your relationships, rather than it just making you numb or angry, which is kind of a common instinct that men have when it comes to emotional pain.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your story with me. I loved hearing your perspective and hearing your stories about Clark and how you were able to find peace in the midst of all of your grief. That's really a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And it was nice to get to know you and to hear a little bit about Emily. Love to hear more sometimes over coffee. But it's a good thing you guys are doing. I think in terms of grieving, out in the community, it's all the more important for those who are suffering to know that they're not alone, and to learn from the mistakes and the tools that we've all used to get through that.